I'm Joey.
I'm Carlene.
And I'm Pete. And this is Triple the Nonsense. Today, we're going to continue our arc on survival. And we're going to get into the delightful topic, if you had the same sense of humor as me, of childhood trauma and how to survive it. And what it's done to us as adults.
Woohoo, surviving childhood trauma. What a lighthearted episode. That's why Carlene and I looked like this, if you're watching.
They felt the need to be as comfy as possible.
Dang right.
And I felt the need to be as contradictory as possible because we all have our coping mechanisms.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this last week, but I cope with humor. So if I apologize if I'm overly trying to make jokes, that's how I deal with trauma. So
yeah, same. Dark humor. We do kind of love that. And a lot of like our common friends are also just like, yeah, that checks out. Let's do this dark humor thing. Let's go be a villain for a season of our life. Come on.
That was literally today. Like,
that was today. From let's be honest, the least likely person to have said that.
Yeah. Like, hey, who wants to be a villain now? We're all like, we're in. We're over it.
Yeah, like,
sure.
I guess if she's in, I guess we're all in because like she's the good guy of the group.
Are we getting jackets? Are we getting pins? Stickers? Tell me more.
Yeah.
What are we doing first?
All of it. We're gonna have 35 pieces of flair we have to wear as villains.
I'm down.
So it's a fun, delightful Office Space episode.
Amazing.
All right. So now that we've deflected for a little while, let's let me try to be the one to keep us focused.
Weird.
I know.
Let's see how long this lasts.
I have it written down.
The
but
first
digitally,
2-hour episode.
The first time ever.
I know.
He's prepared. He's prepared.
I know. It only took a month and a half.
Yeah. Nice.
Hooray. I'm so proud of myself right now that I keep deflecting from the episode. Also, that's a coping mechanism that I use a lot. Just like, let's change the subject to something more easy.
This whole episode is going to be us just deflecting. We're not even going to get to it.
We're going to get to nothing.
Survival by deflecting. That's the whole episode.
Right. We hope you have a shield. If you don't, gamma radiation is going to get you. Why gamma radiation? I don't know. That's just where my head went first. I have problems.
Nerd.
Nerd.
Let's get into problems because I'm a nerd. I think like we should like first figure out like what is childhood trauma? Like what qualifies as childhood trauma? And I think it's thrown around a lot right now because like there's a big focus on mental health. And people are also getting more reflective on like what's happened in their life, and more people are going to therapy, which we love. But I think there's so many different brands of childhood trauma that like affect us all in different ways. So I'll open up to the floor. Like, do you guys have like a general kind of term or barometer for what you consider to be childhood trauma?
What I consider childhood trauma is anything that like sticks with you as an adult, either as like a negative energy or a negative emotion, regardless of what like the intent of the action was. So like I know a lot of people say they have like parental trauma, which I think we all have to some sort. And like, you know, a lot of parents, I'm sure, hopefully don't mean to cause their children trauma. But like everyone's human and everyone makes mistakes. So like things can be said and done, which to an adult might just be like a throwaway comment, but like to a kid that may stick with them for the rest of their life. So like, and this could come from peers. This could come from like an extended family member. Like it's, you know, it's common to say like family trauma, but like childhood trauma could be anything. It could be something that was said to you on a 5th grade bus. Oh, I just had a flashback. But it's like anything negative, regardless of the intent. But what the outcome comes from it that sticks with you for life is emotional damage.
Well, and I will kind of go off of what Joey had said. I feel like it's also like certain people that have like negatively like impacted you in such a weird way. And like years after they like try to, you know, rekindle that bond that you once had. I know for me, that's kind of like the trauma I've had in my life at a young age that, you know, still like stays with me. And like to this day, like I've had, people try to contact me and like seeing how my family is, and that like, and I know we'll probably get into it later, it's just like severely to this day, like still affects me.
That's fair. And I'm going to add on to both of those, just from like personal experience. Sometimes it's also things that you've done.
Oh yeah, true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be overlooked by a lot of people because like they don't want to be like, oh, maybe I'm the villain for a little while in my story. And I know for me personally, I was a bit of a bully for a while. I remember when I was in third grade, I dragged this kid named Steven through the mud, and I still feel horribly guilty about that now. And so like seeing other people get bullied triggers that feeling of guilt in me. And so like I carry this trauma from my childhood because of stuff that I did. Like I did bad things. I did rude, mean things to be funny, to be cool. I moved around a lot as a kid. And so like I was desperate to fit in new places. And like I've said really bad things to people. And like I didn't know how bad they were until later in life. And I'm really glad I've gotten a lot of chance to reflect and listen to other people. But I think a big overlooked aspect of childhood trauma is like, what have I done as well? Like obviously like I've also experienced like moving around a lot, like losing friends a lot of times, accidents, losing people, losing pets too, obviously. Like it's all very traumatic. But I think it's important to also keep in mind for anybody listening out there, like reflect on the things that you've done. And I don't mean to like cause you to feel guilty, but I think that also gives you a chance to make amends. Like you could like get a hold of the people thanks to the magic of social media. And sometimes that might not be appropriate because like if you were the bullier, the person like you were mean to probably doesn't want to talk to you. But like if that window were ever presented, like it's okay to like be like, hey, I might not have been great to you, and I'm really sorry about that. And that might help alleviate some of your guilt. And I recommend like if you get a chance to like make amends for the things that you've done, like do that. Because that would be meaningful because that's a sincere apology. So I also think that in that kind of vein of trauma, sometimes trauma is a cousin of guilt. Like sometimes if something happened to you, like, did I do something to facilitate that? Or am I not worthy of this? So what do you guys think about like how a lot of people might equate feelings of trauma to feelings of guilt?
Well, you giving that whole description gave me a whole lot of flashbacks, and now I'm like uncomfy.
I'm very sorry.
No, it's fine. We agreed to do this episode. We knew what we were getting into. I mean, I feel like it's almost a fine line because there's one thing to be like, oh, there's this one action or something that I did and I feel guilty about it, and like then kind of move on and not make amends. But then there's the kind of like guilt that also like, depending on like how severe the situation was, can also like actively still kind of like eat away at you. So it's like partially wanting to make amends, not only to make the other person feel better, but also to like get that like personal, what's the word? Like the personal benefit of making those amends as well. So you no longer like are living with that guilt. Despite the fact that like making amends with someone, like the action still happened. So like it's still partially there, but I don't know. They're definitely closely related, but they're not always like mutually exclusive, if that makes sense.
And I'll say there definitely is a fine line, but I feel like in some ways they like intertwine too. I feel like in different situations, but I feel like for some people it's more so that I've heard intertwined. But for me, I would be like Joey. I feel like it would be a thin line. But I've also heard that, the other explanation too.
I think I almost made a joke. Don't make a joke. We're having a serious conversation. I think the thing is like, everyone experiences and kind of deals with trauma in different ways. So like the one way that guilt and trauma can affect one person could be the polar opposite of how someone else thinks. And like that could even be a whole discussion and conversation and be like, no, you're wrong. It's like this. And you're like, well, I know what I'm feeling, buddy. Like, don't tell me I'm wrong kind of thing. Like everyone experiences everything differently. So like I don't know, it's a touchy topic to try to like describe because it could be very different for me than it could be for either of you or anyone listening. And like anyone listening or you two could completely disagree with anything I say, but like that doesn't make it untrue for me, or vice versa. I don't know.
No, I agree, Joey, because like the way you handle trauma, like your trauma, is definitely
Dumb
different.
jokes.
That I could possibly like handle my trauma, or Pete, or any of the listeners or viewers. Doesn't mean it's necessarily the wrong way. It's just the way that we handle it, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how you feel comfortable dealing with it.
Right.
Yeah, psychology is such an individual and specific thing for each person. Like there's never going to be one prescribed way to describe an experience or to understand the person. Like it's never going to be a perfect thing. And I think that's something that's important to keep in mind.
If psychology or dealing with trauma could be a perfect thing, man, society would be so much different.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it would for sure.
But now there's still, I mean, it's gotten much better over the last few years, but there's also still such a negative connotation with like mental health and people being like, oh, asking for help is weak. Like, I just need to like shove it down and deal with it and like not ask for help, which is why I know personally I like avoided going to therapy for years because I was like, no, that's like admitting weakness. Like I can never do that. And then I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to implode. So we love therapy. But
I love what you said about like needing therapy and being weak versus being strong. Because it's something like with the students that I work with, a lot of them feel like expressing your feelings is weak and being flexible is weak. And you have to show strength and show that you're strong. And there's an analogy that I heard when I was listening to, I think it was Bruce Lee, who was very Taoist, talking about what strength is. And I think Bruce Lee is a universally acceptable model for like, as a strong guy, like you don't mess with Bruce Lee. And what he was talking about and like the Taoist philosophy is like, strength isn't in rigidity. Strength isn't in this like flexing and being hard. Because if you look at all of the trees that survive best in hurricanes, they all get beat up and they flex and they bend and they survive because they're not the rigid, strong trees like an oak tree. Like it's a palm tree, it's a willow tree. The ones that can take a beating and be flexible, they're the ones that move on. So like strength has a bunch of different barometers, and like rigidity can be a strength, but so is flexibility, and so is being weak and being able to bend, because sometimes you need that to survive whatever storm you're going through.
Right. And like, and I've come to terms with this a lot over the last few years. It's like showing that vulnerability is a huge strength because that's hard. Like being vulnerable, whether it's to peers or your family or even just to yourself, having vulnerability is like, it's so exposing of like everything going on in your head that like to like have the strength to be vulnerable and like speak up about certain things that you're either experiencing or thinking about is arguably one of the strongest things you can do as a person. So I know like, between the three of us and other friends, and I'm sure in your other personal relationships, you've had moments of like, if you feel comfortable venting to someone or saying something, like we always have like this natural instinct to be like, I'm so sorry for venting. I'm so sorry for like ranting. I've done it. Like we've all done it. But like, no, that's such a good thing to like have those connections to be able to like share trauma with and like feel comfortable like being vulnerable with and like expressing those things, because that's truly the first step to like healing from it. Because if you keep everything bottled in, then you're just eventually gonna like the pressure is gonna build up and you're gonna explode. Science. So
I mean, I would definitely agree. I from personal experience, both you two know, and for the listener and viewers, it's like I have come to be able to like Snapchat both Joey and Pete on the side and be like, this is what's going on. I need to say it to somebody or I'm going to explode. So kind of exactly what Joey had said. And I mean, obviously I have friends here in Arizona, but like they hear it probably all the time from me. And I feel like, in my personal opinion, I feel like they're just like, we've got it. You've told us, move on. But with like Pete and Joey, with like you guys, it's like outsider's perspective, and you either rage out, tell me how it is, or just be there just to like listen. So,
well, even that, like you say, like your friends at home must be, oh, I'm over this, but like they're probably not thinking that unless they tell you, but they're
Right.
probably not thinking that. They're probably like, and I do the same thing, like, oh, I must be really annoying my friends with this stuff. But like if they're true friends, which I'm assuming and hope they are, shout out to Olivia, like they're there to support you, and like they probably don't think those things. So because I know I'm the same way. For years I'm like, I can't bother my friends with this, they're gonna think I'm annoying. Like it's very easy to feel that way. And also I apologize for yelling to you the other day, but I was venting because you made me remember that. I was so mad. I was like, I need to vent to Carlene. I just yelled.
And I told you, I said, let it out. Like, I rather get it, and then afterwards be like, okay. And then you just said, I just needed to vent. I was like, you're good. You're good, I promise.
And then you notice for the next half hour, I was extra goofy and fun. That's how I deal with trauma.
That's
the anger happens,
Joey.
and then I'm like,
let's do a funny thing.
So
that actually
about
like
everything. Sorry.
That brings it back to like what we're talking about, because like all three of us is the same thing. Like, I'm so sorry to vent. I'm so sorry, because like I think we're all scared to be a burden on anybody, because we're all like, we want people to be happy around us. We want to be a source of goodness in the world, and we feel bad that we're letting you down right now. I'm so sorry to let you down. And that's like the voice inside my head, like, don't let people down, be happy. Right. Because like nobody wants to feel like they're a burden. And I think that comes from some childhood issues. And then I think they also like, I just want to vent comes from like when I was little, nobody listened to me. And I just want to be heard. And there's actually like, with that in mind, like there's an episode of Modern Family that like made that click. And there's an episode where Phil was with Gloria and he was complaining about Claire, his wife, and Phil was like, then I proposed a solution, and then Claire just got mad at me. And they were all, it's like, she just wanted to be listened to. And like that made sense to me. Like people just want to be heard. And I think a lot of times it's easy as adults to like listen to kids, but not actually hear and validate and authorize what they're saying and feeling. And I think that translates when you're an adult into like, I just want to vent. I'm sorry I'm venting. I know it's burdensome to hear me vent, but like, I just want to be heard.
Yeah, I think it's so easy as a society to be like, oh, they're just a kid, they're overreacting about this one thing. Because like, and my brain immediately goes to like, if a kid's freaking out or angry or sad about like something that a kid did at recess or something, like, yes, as adults we have the capacity to be like, oh, that's not a big deal, rub it off, you'll be fine. But to them, like, that's they're consuming their whole entire life. So it's like listening out those emotions and letting kids have that vulnerability is so important at a young age, which I also think probably sparks from like misogyny and the patriarchy being like, oh, like, don't be emotional, you're not allowed to have emotions, and that just like pervades everywhere, honestly.
Boys don't cry.
Exactly, like not letting young boys have emotions, and I'll just rub some dirt in it, oh, they're just being boys, whatever. Like doesn't teach them how to like properly experience their emotions, right? Which then turns into rage and anger when they're older because they don't know what to do with emotions. I'm getting us off topic, sorry. Can you tell I'm a feminist? Moving on. So
but here's the other thing. Not just with the three of us, I can probably name quite a few people that we've had to constantly say, stop apologizing, stop apologizing, stop
Absolutely.
Apologizing.
Yeah.
Because in the end, there's nothing to apologize for. Exactly. There is nothing to apologize for. Because I feel like it's that society thing. You have like, if it doesn't go with the topic that is being talked about, you have to apologize. Okay, I'm guilty of it. I know for a fact I am guilty of it. But
Aren't we all? Yeah.
Yeah.
we have become such a society that saying sorry is like the epitome of, I know what I had said means nothing to anybody else, when it shouldn't be. I don't know
Right.
how many times I've had to tell my students, stop apologizing. You need to tell me this. I'd rather you tell me so I know how to handle your day
Mhm.
or go about your day.
Mhm.
It is so frustrating.
Meeting kids where they're at. I say that always.
Mhm.
Yeah. So moving forward, so like we know what trauma is. We know what trauma is. I am a very big and vocal proponent of seeing a therapist. I think everyone, even if someone had a perfect childhood, should see a therapist. I've been seeing a therapist for, I don't even know, at least 10 years, I want to say. Yeah, at least 10 years. And it's like, it's ebbed and flowed. Like there have been times where like I'd go like once a month. There'd be time where I'd go every single week because like life just keeps hitting. You need to process like things that you haven't processed yet, and then like life keeps hitting you down because that's how life is. So I want to talk about therapy for a little bit. And there's different types of therapy that, and people just don't. I think there's a lot of stigma around therapy, like you mentioned earlier, Joey. That like, say, oh, dudes don't go to therapy because like who talks about their feelings, and it's not about feelings. Like I don't go and like, oh yeah, I'm feeling sad today, and I feel like the color is blue for my feelings today. That's not what therapy is.
Right. Which is again part of the stigma. Like, what picture do you
Yeah.
see here? Yeah.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah. So therapy, like, it's about talking through things that have happened in the past month. Like it doesn't have to be like super deep, but like it helps you like process things because like your brain, and this is what was explained to me like through a couple different like people who have psychology degrees, and I've read up on it, and I'm a scientifically literate person. Your brain processes like your day-to-day stuff while you're in REM sleep, but sometimes there's big things that happen that there's not enough time during REM sleep to file that away properly. And so you need to process those and file those away when your brain is fully functioning and like able to like process and it's like think about things fully. And so like you're processing just day-to-day stuff, and then you realize like, oh, like this was kind of a big deal. I haven't even thought about it yet, but like it did make a big impact on my mood for the next several days. And like that lets you like next time a situation like that happens, you're like, okay, I see this happening. Here's how I can react to that and like handle it better, and be a better support for someone who's going through it that I see they're going through what I went through. And then I went through a type of therapy called EMDR, which the acronym eludes me. I think it's electronic motion desensitization repetition, something like that. But it basically like while you're conscious puts your brain into like the brain patterns of REM sleep so you can better process things. Because like when you go through major traumas, like it's like trying to put a trapper keeper into a file cabinet. It's just like you need to do a lot of work on that. And there's different kinds of therapies that really help with different needs that you might have.
So
We love therapy.
I'm gonna take it as an outsider because I was one of those people that thought therapy was for the weak. I always was terrified, to go to therapy, to, seek out therapy, everything like that. So within like the last couple of years, I'm like, all right, I need to, find, a therapist, find something. And I'm still like in the process of finding it, the right therapy and therapist to, to try. I know for me, like kind of like my self therapy, if you want to call it that way, is just to, and I've said this in a previous episode, but like, just to like write, like put music on and just write. I feel like for me that until I can find someone or the right type of therapy for me, writing has probably been the best form for me. to do that, because like it just pages upon pages. And I mean, it might take me 2 to 3 hours, but at least, you know, it gets all of my thoughts and feelings out. Is it the best? No, but until I find something, it's definitely helping.
Well, I think, and that's a really good thing to do, because I know a lot of people, and I started to do it and then stopped for some reason, like will like take notes when things are like something they noticed that may have been traumatic or something that angered them or something in their life, to be like, oh, I'm going to bring this to my therapist, and like keep like notes or something, which I started doing and then for some reason stopped. I know for me, like I already mentioned earlier, like, you know, there's that big stigma for therapy for me. And I would always say like, oh yeah, people should go to therapy, but I never considered it for myself. Weird. But then like leading up to going back to school in person in the fall of 2020, like I've always had some form of anxiety because I'm a millennial. It just kind of comes with like being born in the 90s. I like I had never experienced such bad anxiety in my entire life. Like couldn't sleep, like, like when you get like stressed or nervous, that pit feeling in your stomach, it was like always. And I was like, I can't live like this. I need help. Like, and yes, I have good friends and family support, but like it's not enough. So I actually really got pushed is the wrong word into seeking out therapy by a friend of mine named Michael, who I met on TikTok, who was always like, all of his content, whether it's videos or his lives, always talk about being like, oh, I'm going to therapy. Here's where I learned therapy. Everyone should go to therapy. And like that really helped like destigmatize it for me.
Mhm.
So it was, I think, like August of 2020. I was like, I'm going to find a therapist, and found one in like a day, which I've heard finding a good therapist can take a while. So I really
So
lucked out
lucky.
with
I
that.
am very jealous.
Like I emailed within 15 minutes. Yeah, sure. When do you want to start? And I was like, whoa. But this guy's description on his consulting site was like, deals with people with anxiety, typically through like comedy and like dealing with trauma, like with humor. And I was like, that's what I need.
Did you wish really hard?
I guess so. And he
Wow.
showed up and I was like, hello, sir. This is exactly what I need. And I remember like the biggest thing I feared about, because when I started looking into therapy, I was, I think, 2 months out of the closet as bi to the world, which I did during like quarantine. So like it was still new to me. So like I had people being like, you need to make sure he's LGBT friendly, because like you don't want to get a bad therapist that's like, against that. And I went, oh,
Yeah.
you're right. That could be more traumatic. So like after he like confirmed, I was like, are you LGBT safe? I'm bi. And he was like, yes. So kind of like what you said earlier, Pete, I don't know like the specific kind of therapy I go to. Like, I guess I could ask, I just don't know. But like what mine, it started out by being like, what are your feelings? What would you like rate it on this kind of scale? Just because he wanted to see where I was at. But then for the most part, over the last year and a half or so, it's been just like, hey, like check in, like how's it going? Like what's been going on? How about this? And then just like kind of vent about life. And it kind of becomes like I complain about things and he'll like confirm it, and then he'll like empathize and tell similar stories. And then we chat about tattoos for 10 minutes. And then the session. And like
You have tattoos?
I have 12
Too
going
many.
on 14. But, and I say this, my therapist says, you know what? Tattoos are a really good form of like, like good for your mental health. And I was like, thank you for confirming my love of tattoos. It's good for my mental health. But realistically, I was like, I didn't realize therapy was literally just me like complaining about life and getting like reaffirmed of my feelings. Like that's like, and obviously like as I discuss things and he like asks questions, like sometimes I'm like, oh, that triggered an event from my past. Is this why I'm reacting this way? And like, yeah, it's just really great. And I agree that everyone should go to therapy. I have some people in my life, I will not name names, that are like, oh, I don't need to go to therapy. Like, you're my therapist. I just vent to you. And I'm like, why do you think I'm in therapy? Like, get a professional help. You're causing me anxiety. Like, go get your own therapist. Like, I'm not licensed. So I truly think, and again, I don't want to be a broken record, but Pete, you said it perfectly. Even if you had a perfect life, look at Encanto. Having a perfect life can still cause trauma. I think everyone should be in therapy.
And then just to kind of like respond to something Carlene said earlier, like obviously like I grew up in the patriarchy. I was the patriarchy. And so I grew up being like, therapies for the weak. I don't need that stuff. I'll just tough through it. And then here I am now being like, smash the patriarchy, go to therapy, do all the things that are good.
We love character development.
Yes. That's what therapy could do. Like therapy could just turn you into like a less awful person than like me.
You're factually a very good person. So clearly
I'm
works.
all right. I have passed inspection.
Don't
So,
have
like,
to get impounded yet.
right. So the next part I want to talk about, and I'll go first in this one because it's a bit vulnerable, and we've kind of touched on it a bit, like just normalizing talking about it with people you care about, and I care about you guys and our listeners. So I just want to like talk about like the trauma that I experienced as a child that has kind of, I think, impacted who I am as a person the most, and still does to this day. And you guys have probably seen it already. And then I'm always busy. So at a very young age, like my folks owned a fish and lure company. And I didn't have an allowance. I had like a salary. I earned my money like filing lead fishing lures down and painting them and tying them. And I bought my own first bike. I bought my own like first comic books, and that became a lifelong obsession. But because like I've been working for as long as I can remember, all I do is work. I literally work all day, and then I go to my second job. And with the school I work at, I do 4 bajillion things. I coach 2 sports. I'm in the drama club. I'm in the school improvement stuff. They emailed me today to be on 2 more teams because they're like, one's a safety team, one's like an emergency health response team. And I was like, I'm probably the best person suited in the school for that. And like, it's hard to say no because I've got an incredible work ethic, which I think is a really valuable trait. But on the other hand, it's a huge liability because it's really socially inhibited me because I'm just like, I can't do things. I'm working all the time. And even for the podcast, it's hard to like find time because like I'm always working. And so like one of my big childhood traumas is just like work all the time. And Joey, you'll probably appreciate this part a little bit. Later on, like I think when I got to 3rd grade, my parents opened up a band instrument repair business, which I worked in and was good at.
I didn't know that.
I can fix band instruments.
You're hired.
Mail me your stuff from Maine. But yeah, like all I know is work. Like that's probably what I'm best at, is just like working really hard to a fault. And that's something I work through in therapy. Like sometimes you got to say no to extra tasks. And I intellectually, I know that, but it's so ingrained in me because of my childhood that I have a hard time being like, no, I won't do this work. So it's kind of a childhood trauma that like isn't the worst one, but it's definitely gotten in the way in a lot of very significant ways.
Yeah, and that's also something that's very easy for people who aren't kind to take advantage of. It's like, oh, Pete works hard. He's not going to say no. I'm going to ask him to do this thing. Like,
I have been a sucker for a very long time.
Carlene, is that how we got him to do the podcast? Now I feel bad. Is this the episode?
Now I'm thinking like I challenged him to do some dances on TikTok. Now I feel like I've added to the trauma.
Let me say this though. I have also been like, I just can't do it. So let that encourage you. Like, no, like I appreciate you and respect you enough that I know you're not going to hate me for being like, hey, I'm going to let you down. And I'm sorry for that. But like, I know you get it because I see that you respect me. And I genuinely appreciate that out of both of you, because sometimes I don't have the energy for it.
Well, and literally, and have we told you this? I don't actually know. Like early stages of putting the podcast together, like Carlene and I would Zoom all the time and do research and gather things. And we both would be like, Pete's super busy. We're not going to ask him to do stuff. We get that he's super busy with work. Like, fine. What he could do nothing besides show up and talk. Who cares? Like, from the
I have
get-go,
good ideas every now and then.
You have great ideas, but like literally, like we both agreed earlier on. Like Pete's busy. Like he works like 70, but like you've said, 6 gajillion jobs, which is a number that definitely exists. So we're like, you know what? Fine. He can take less of the work. Whatever. I have more time to do stuff. Cool. Like. So yeah, we've never faulted you for that, and we would never take advantage of you saying yes to things. And I'm glad to hear that this is not your resignation letter from the podcast. So cool.
I guess I'll go next because so my trauma is kind of family trauma. So right now it's my mother and father, my younger brother, and myself, and that is all I have. And that kind of stems from There was an event that happened when I was 8 years old that I witnessed. I'm not going to go into too much detail because that's a little too personal that to discuss at the moment. But I was 8 years old and witnessed something between my mom and her mom. Just really like traumatized me. Like if I like really think about it, it is still like vivid in my mind. So we've had since then a falling out with my mom's side of the family, and for quite some time my dad's side of the family, until both my grandfather and grandmother passed on his side, and he has two sisters that we've had a falling out with as well. Everything was fine and dandy until I turned 18, when all of a sudden everybody on my mom's side was trying to get a hold of me, trying to like tell me what really happened, what I didn't see was like false and all that, trying to like reconnect. And for me at that time, it was like, no, you really just messed this up for me and my family. I can't. So a lot of that kind of still sticks in the back of my head, because I think, I think about these times of like, when I end up getting married, a whole lot of, what if my husband to be would be like big family, and I just have my four family members. And I think what sometimes, people don't get about me is how close I am with my family because of that. I literally, talk to my parents almost on a constant basis. My brother and I, like, we're all we have. So when we were looking for a house, we were like, yeah, we'll get a place together. Sometimes that's the reason why I don't look into moving to other states. Because my parents and my younger brother are all I have.
Right.
So it's really hard for me to pass that, and for people to really understand that they're all I have. So that's kind of about my trauma and all that. It's not that I don't want to like do the things that I want to do, or like even pre-COVID, like travel the places I want to travel. It's like literally like if I'm gone and something happens to my parents or my younger brother, I'm not there and they're all I have. Right. So.
And that brings up something I was going to say earlier, but forgot, is that I really, one thing that can fuel to trauma, whether it's peer or family, but I feel like it happens a lot with family trauma, is like when something happens and is traumatic to you, and then that a family member goes, well, no, it wasn't like that. Like, it wasn't as bad as you think. Like, here's how, like, no, you're remembering it wrong. Like, you telling that part of your story, like, triggers me, being like, no, like, you don't know what I'm feeling. You don't know how I saw the situation. Even if I'm wrong, like, that's still the feelings I have and know. Like, stop gaslighting me and just telling me that, like, my feelings are fake, And then also, I think, similar to how I think the strongest friendships are formed with shared hatred, I think a lot of the like strongest friend and family bonding can be through shared trauma, which sucks. But like, having as close as a connection as you do with your immediate family, and I'm a similar way. I think, yeah, it's unfortunate that that's the way it happened, but like that's part of the silver lining of trauma that can happen sometimes, is like having those shared experiences and like closer relationships. Can you also tell that I'm deflecting, talking about my own trauma? Cool.
Yeah. I think because like you understand, like all caps understand that person. Like, I see you, I get it. I like genuinely deep in my soul, I get what you're saying and feeling. And me too. I think that's a real and significant thing.
We love being
real and significant thing.
we love being an empath. It's great. I mean, I guess I can talk a little bit about me. I won't talk about my family trauma because my family trauma is actually not that bad. Like compared to a lot of things. Like I'm pretty lucky in that department of life. Um, I will say I didn't realize this till like within the last couple of years, like how much like religious trauma that like me and like mostly my sister and like family kind of experienced. Because if you're unaware, I was raised in the church. Ages 3 to like 16, we went every single Sunday. There was like a children's youth group thing like every Wednesday for a few years. It's like at least 2 days a week we were like at the church doing church stuff. Like that was like part of my identity. It was like, oh, I can't hang out with it that day. I got church in the morning or whatever. Which isn't a bad thing. I still consider myself a Christian. I have beliefs. I just like the church cult that it can be, ain't it? I digress. But like one thing, and maybe this, how do I want to tell the story? I'll tell it this way. Like growing up, and still to a point a little bit, but being an adult's jaded me a little bit. I was always a hopeless optimist. And like, even if bad stuff was happening to me, I'd be like, nah, it's fine. Like, look at this positive thing. Like I always deflected without realizing it, being like, oh, I'm just an optimistic, happy person. Cool. Doesn't always help in life. But like, you know, experiences and stuff that I took away from the church was like the love one another, help your neighbor, treat others the way you want to be treated, you know, the Christian things Jesus would do. So like I realized in high school when I was probably 16 or 17, like how much religion can be messed up because like I either didn't pay attention to the negative things or I was just obliviously unaware, being like everything's sunshine and rainbows because like life is good. I remember it was around the time where the Supreme Court was like making the decision about marriage equality in the United States. So this must have been 2011, 2012, maybe. I remember me and a group of friends were like having a discussion about it. And like I hadn't chimed in yet, like people were just talking, we were there. And one of my friends was like, well, Joey and I are Christians, so like we're against marriage equality. And I was like, since when? People can love whoever they want. I don't care. And she was like, well, aren't you a Christian? I was like, yeah. And like love is love. Like I don't like what? Like that's literally what I was raised on. Like love, full stop, just love. Like that's the whole point. And like that was like kind of the first experience of being like, are Christians bad people? Like, and obviously a majority of them aren't. It's the ones that are the loudest that like have the negative connotation with it, and but they're the few. Because again, still consider myself, but like over the last few years and like reconnecting with some people, some friends of my sister and I who like also went to the church with us, like before COVID, we like hadn't seen each other in years, went and got lunch. And they're like, hey, remember this like traumatic time we went to this church? And we were like, I kind of was like, what do you mean? No. And they were like talking about experiences and stuff. And I was like, huh, that was really messed up. So like it took it took other people like reminding me, because again, I either like suppressed it really far or I just truly didn't see it for what it was because I was a hopeless optimist. So I don't know. So there's still times, and like even like making new friends and like our friend group where like we have friends that say like I'm a conservative Christian, and I'm always like I'm a Christian too, but I'm a liberal. And like also because of media and stuff, like the second you hear conservative and Christian, your brain goes like, oh, bad. But like that's so cut and dry. That's not the world. So it's like part of me like I don't know, I have moments of like, should I like not say that I like grew up in the church or like have these beliefs, but like I don't want people to think that I'm like a hateful, spiteful person, but like that also goes against everything I learned in the church growing up. So it's like always this weird balancing act I feel like I have to do, and like trying to unlearn these very new like I can't think words, like trying to unlearn these like new perceptions I have of people who like are Christians and go to church and stuff. Because until the last couple of years, I like if someone said, wow, Christians are awful, I never would have been like, yeah, you're right. Like I would have like defended it. But like now if someone says it, I'm like, some of them are, because some of them do spread hates using the Bible, but look at these people who don't, because they're like actually following what the Bible says, you know? So I don't know. It's a lot of like, it's less trauma that like lived with me always, and more like within the last couple of years I was kind of like, oh, that's messed up, I think. So it's like learning how to like deal with that. I don't know if any of that made sense. I might just cut it all. I won't, but
no, I think I definitely think it does. I mean, how do I want to word this? It's always messed up somewhere, regardless of certain things. So, and again, certain people handle certain things very differently. So,
Right.
So I'm gonna let that kind of conclude the childhood trauma portion of this, and of course it's Black History Month, and so we want to honor that. And we all know me, the sciencey guy, so of course I'm gonna bring science into my Black History fact, and it's very relevant to COVID.
Scary.
But I'm gonna turn 45 degrees so I can read it properly, because I'm not gonna like do this on an ad lib, because I want to make sure I get the facts straight, because facts are important. So in the early 1700s, about 100 years before Edward Jenner produced his smallpox vaccine, and he based his smallpox vaccine based on the cowpox. Smallpox was ripping through New England, and there's a slave named Onesimus, who, when he lived back in Africa, was able to treat some sicknesses by like having someone who was sick, they'd extract like some pus out of it, and then take that pus or whatever that fluid was, cut a person a little bit and put it into that wound. So you'd be exposing that person who was healthy otherwise to that pathogen in a very small dose. And that person would develop immunity to that disease. And so we actually, in the Americas, we owe the concept of vaccines to a slave. And I think that's an incredible and important part of Black history, because like Black history is more than just people fighting for rights. Like Black history is full of people who were brilliant people saving lives before they were taken out of their country and forced to do things. And they still, even when they got here, despite the deplorable conditions, still continue to save lives. Because black people can be anything. They can be scientists too. And if anybody tells you otherwise, I've got a problem with them.
Wow. That blows my mind, because like,
yeah.
obviously when Black people were slaves, they weren't even considered humans. So like they were considered property. So the fact that they still did everything in their power to like find a way to help other people. Wow.
It's like humans are good.
It's like humans
can be incredibly good.
It's almost like your skin pigmentation has nothing to do with your character. Wild.
Right. Wow.
Crazy thought. So,
well, I'm horribly emotional. So that note, if you enjoyed this episode, cried at any point, or just have a lot of feelings, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give the video, if you're watching the video, give it a like, leave a comment, all the things. If you're listening on Spotify or Anchor or any other listening platform, please make sure to give us a good rating. Answer the question on the Spotify poll, because we love building a little community about some nonsensical things. And make sure to follow our podcast on TikTok at Triple the Nonsense, and Instagram at Triple the Nonsense Podcast, and all of our personal TikToks, all linked below, and all of things. And does anyone have anything else to add? Did I miss anything, or are we okay?
I think we've covered everything.
All right. We did it. We felt the feels. And on that note, I'm Joey.
I'm Carlene.
And I'm Pete. And this was Triple the Nonsense.
See you next week.
See ya.
Bye.